Ladies and gentlemen, here we are for Jack Jenkins in his hotel room. Obviously, have to almost get a VRO to get an interview with you, but here we are.
Oh, well, you are a lucky man, and here you are.
We're obviously joined in the bedroom with none other than Dan Maudsley in the corner, your management from Chosen Advisory.
Yep.
We talked about that in the...
It's because nobody trusts you because you're a scumbag.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair.
You need public relations in it.
Yeah, it's fair. And a lawyer. What is it like, though? Like, I mean, we talked about, you were managing yourself and then, first off, people would go, why? And then to reach out to them, like, what kind of led to that?
So the big thing was when I first was doing it by myself, I was actually really enjoying it. So there was like talking to companies and building relationships and doing that sort of stuff. I actually really enjoyed that sort of stuff. And, it led to a lot of fruitful opportunities for me. And then after the injury and on this comeback part, I kind of had this period where we were talking to the UFC, but we weren't we weren't having clear communication. It was more, but it was probably like time differences and all that sort of stuff. And I went in to see my coach, Simon, and I said, mate, I'm going to get a manager, I think, because I want to spend 99% of my time focusing on what's in the gym, and the other 1% I can spend on other stuff like making relationships and meeting, people who might want to be brand ambassadors for and that sort of thing. And he said, that's brilliant. I actually wanted to talk to you about it because I don't want to have to deal with the UFC anymore. Not that it was negative, just that he's like, I want to be a coach. I want to focus on coaching. I don't want to focus on this. And he said, sweet. And then, I pretty much that day messaged Dan and said, hey, mate, can we set up a meeting with me, you and Tim? I'd love to talk about, working with Chosen. And Dan and Tim got back to me straight away, said, yep, let's do it. And then from pretty much the next day, we had a contract done up. And from the day after that, we had clear lines of communication with the UFC again. It was, I knew exactly where I was at. It was all explained to me. And then fight got booked, deals have been done, and it's taken a weight off my shoulders, but in a way where I'm still quite involved. I'm not like handing the reins over in the sense that like I'm not, not in charge of what's going on. It's just very collaborative. Trust Dan and Tim with anything and everything, whether it be UFC, commercial deals, anything like that. And just moving forward, I think it's just going to help me get to another high level.
What's the difference between, being say like a Robert Whittaker rival where he knows he's the man, you know what I mean? And then you're coming into Chosen where there's some bigger stars with sort of bigger profiles. And of course you went to Chosen, they didn't go to you. It's very different. Was it in a weird way, is it like humbling at all, or did you have to swallow any ego at any stage?
Nah, absolutely not. I'd already worked with Daniel and Tim at Paradigm. And the only reason I wasn't still working with him was, just essentially paperwork. There was Tim wasn't at Paradigm anymore, and I didn't want to be represented where Tim wasn't working anymore. So there was no ego swallow for me because I knew how much value they could add for me. As far as not being the biggest star, I've been in training rooms where I wasn't the best guy, and you're walking around in all these places where you're not the biggest guy. As long as you focus on what you can do and have faith and belief in what I bring to the table, then I know that we're going to have a good relationship anyway.
And we talked about it kind of like off camera, and we feel like you are in the most important restaurant of the UFC, but we don't think that you've really sort of gotten to show kind of just what Jack Jenkins can do, but you seem to still be pushed like a star. Why do you think that is?
Look, I can't speak on behalf of the UFC. I can only talk about what I can bring to the table, and I think, my ability to speak well, my social media presence and, sellability. And I think a big thing is like how the Australian market and the Australian crowd responds to me. I think it's no secret on Sunday when I walk out, it's going to be quite a big pop. It's the same as it was for my debut in Perth. And, I don't think I'm getting anything I haven't earned from the UFC. I think they're just putting me on a path that they think is the best for me to manage me as an asset for the company, which I think I am.
And are there any things that you've kind of had to do throughout your UFC career that you didn't think you'd have to do? More media things, company-wide things that sort of fighters on the outside probably aren't aware of heading into their UFC career.
No, not necessarily. Like, the one thing is, most things don't change. Like, I think the perception is that once you get in the UFC, like everything's different, and it's just not. And it's like, I think some guys who are still on the local scene will be like, oh, when I get to the top level, I can do this or I can do that, or it'll be easier then because I'll have this behind me or whatever. And there's some little things that are nicer, but at the end of the day, it's in the gym in the morning, in the gym in the afternoon, go home, get your rest, eat properly. In the gym in the morning, in the gym in the afternoon, go home, get your rest. Listen to your coaches, keep your head down. A big thing for me is having that sort of power difference between me and my coaches. So my coaches are very much my coaches more than they are my friends. And we are friendly and I love them as people, but there's definitely a deference from me. Like, I am definitely below them. They speak to me, yes, coach, no, coach, hey, Jack, you need to change this. Yes, there's not, it's collaborative in the sense where if I go, hey, I want to do this, then we'll work together. But I'm not buddy with them. They are my coaches, and I take that, and that really works for me.
Same with your manager, or are they below you?
Now, management, I'll take all their advice on board.
Does that mean that you look at, say, your head coach, Simon Carson, and if things aren't working out, you could pull the trigger and go, hey, I need someone else?
100%. But the one thing I'll say about Simon and Andy both is anytime I've ever expressed, and this is what I think you need from your coaches, anytime I've ever expressed that I'm not getting something I think I need, they endeavour to make sure I get it or explain to me why they think I don't need that. Does that make sense?
What's an example?
So an example, I am struggling with my boxing or whatever. It's like, all right, well, Andy, we'll go get your boxing rounds at this gym. We'll work this stuff. We'll put the Thai pads away for a bit and get the boxing mitts out. And then boom, all of a sudden my boxing starts improving because I'm taking on board the things they say. If I need different looks, like if I need Simon will be like, all right, well, let's look around. I'll try and bring this guy in. We'll try and bring this. I'll send you out to St Kilda. I'll make sure Lockie works with you, whatever it might be. And in saying that, there's not actually much that has come up that we disagree on anything or I feel like I need. But in open and honest communication, if I said I need something, they would just try and help me or send me in the direction of somewhere to get it. They don't have that ownership of like, no, do it my way and stay here and listen to me. It's collaborative.
Have they ever had to kind of pull you in line in terms of your career? And I know your manager's there that kind of wants you to make lots of money so he can make lots of money. But like that side of you being a business can get in the way of you being an amazing fighter. Have you ever had to have any tough conversations, or have your coaches ever had to have tough conversations with you?
Yeah, for sure. Like Andy, when I hurt my arm, I had told Andy, I went in after and I said, hey, look, I know my arm's cooked, but I want to come in and I'll run. I'll come in and I'll do my running. This is just like a small example of something, right? And then realizing how cooked my arm was, I was like, you know what, I'm not going in to do my running. I don't want to go in and do my running. But I didn't call Andy and tell him I wasn't going to go in and do the running week to week. And then when I went back a couple of weeks later, he was like, that's not like you. He's like, you show up even when you shouldn't show up. He said, even if you weren't going to, you would call me. And I went, you're 100% right. Apologized, said, sweet. And he goes, let's just get it back on track. So then just built on from there. But being able to have like open and honest conversation and take that feedback on board and go, you know what, you're right, instead of being defensive about it, is, I think, like as an athlete, a really valuable tool.
Was that you going a bit like, I don't need to tell you?
No, it was definitely not that. It was more like I was so disappointed that I couldn't do a full training schedule that I kind of went, if I can't actually train, I don't want to do anything. I'll do my rehab in the morning at home and then, chill out. It was when I was pretty injured, So it's not like it's never, and Andy knows, it's never going to be a lazy thing. I've got no issue doing the work. But it was just good to have that feedback and that in place both ways where we can talk to each other like that.
Well, let's go back to that injury. I mean, first off, do you think you're winning the fight?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, I would say I would have been definitely up in the first round. And the second round, he was doing everything he could against the cage, and I was handling that up until the throw.
And you've done pretty well at, and you said it in the media day as well, that you don't want to take away a man's flowers either. Like he did the throw, you put your arm out. It's not a freak injury. He made you do that, therefore you definitely lost. Do you feel like too many people almost want to tell you what you want to hear type thing? Yeah.
I think a lot of the time it comes from a good place. It's people who care about you, or at least, you know, like you as a fighter, and they want to say, no, you know, you're the man, keep going, that sort of thing. It's all positive, I think, mostly. But I see too many people, particularly like local scene fighters, who always, they shouldn't have lost that decision. They shouldn't have lost that round. You know, there's a few people who their records are very average and they've never lost a round, according to them. Never lost a round. So it's just like take responsibility for the things you do wrong and try and be better.
I mean, go back to your sort of days on the local scene. Would you have done anything differently, or what sort of advice would you give young Jack?
Definitely. I would have had an amateur career. I never had an amateur career, and I was forced to make mistakes as a pro, which, you know, cost me time at certain points. And I understand it was a bit of a different time, like, than the younger guys, but I would just encourage the younger guys now, treat your amateur career like an apprenticeship. Take tough grappling fights, take tough striking fights, take, you know, tough fights maybe where you don't cut as much weight. Take tough fights where you do test yourself a bit on the weight cut. Find all the problems and kinks in your armour in terms of your skill set early, and develop that on, because the last thing you want to do is go pro and be finding out during your pro career what your shortcomings are. And I had to go through that.
Like more judo classes.
Yeah.
On that injury though, I mean, I don't want to get too, like, you know, forcefully like sentimental or anything, but like, did you go through any like tough times? Was it hard?
Yeah, 100%. Look, there in that first 2 weeks, so between when the injury happened and I went to see the sports doc, and he referred me to the surgeon, and he said, look, the surgeon can't do anything for you until the swelling goes down. So he can't test it, he can't do anything. He'll get the results from the MRI, but MRIs on elbows are all pretty inconclusive. It'll tell you structurally what's there, but if the elbow is still in itself stable, then you're good. But I didn't know. So there was this 2 week period waiting for the swelling to go down, and that was quite hard. That was quite dark, because you're like, I don't know how bad this is. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know, will it ever come back? And especially like, given I'm just at the start of my career peak, like a male MMA fighter peak sort of like 32 to 35. So I'm just coming into that. But then after that spot point, when he took me in the surgery, he goes, your elbow's in unbelievable shape given the surgery. He watched the tape in front of me, and he had the MRI in front of him, and he was grabbing my arm going, I cannot believe your arm's in such good shape after this, which I think is a credit to the strength and conditioning program that I'm on, and everything around it was strong enough to keep it together. And then from there, I really didn't have a dull moment. I accepted that I was out for a while. Once I accepted it, I was happy. Like, I was like, sweet, whatever, I'll do other things that I can. And then as soon as I could get back in the gym, I did. Did you kind of go, oh, right, well, I'm on this injury, I've got to sort of still look after myself, so when I'm better, I can get right back into it? Or did you sort of take advantage, because a man that has had a sort of fight career for so many years, you haven't been able to sort of get on the piss as much? Did you kind of take advantage of that? Absolutely. Yeah. Well, when I wasn't in the gym, it was easy. Not so much getting on the piss, but little things like Christmas, right? Like I can't remember. I think 5 out of the last 6 Christmases, I've had a fight booked or was going to get a fight booked. So it's like you're sitting there with your Christmas plate, and it's like a bit of chicken and some salad and rice or whatever. But just being able to spend time with my family and, you know, go out for dinner with my partner and things like that, I definitely took advantage of that. But it was all very much like as soon as I can get back in the gym, I'm going for it. Does she ever get frustrated? I mean, obviously you're doing really well, but, you know, you can't, like, you go to the movies, you know, you got to pack different snacks and like little things like that. Like, and in a way, she kind of misses out on bits of life. Does that ever kind of
become an issue at all?
Nah. Well, it shouldn't. She knew what she was getting in for. You take the good with the bad. But oh well. I think when we went home from Perth, we were on the private jet, so you get the benefits and you get the downside sometimes. So
You're private.
That's it. What's that?
How'd you go private?
That's none of your business, Mitch.
Oh, were you representing yourself at the time?
Huh?
Were you representing yourself at the time? When it comes to sort of like, balancing fighting and your life, are you one of those guys where it's like this is my life, everything revolves around it? Sorry, mum and dad. Sorry, everyone. I can't see you guys today. I've got boxing. Or do you sort of try and sort of balance?
I'm just very like routined. So I on Monday afternoons I go to Bacchus Marsh to do my strength work. So I see mum and dad on a Monday at lunchtime. So I have my Thai boxing in the morning, go have lunch with mum and dad, then go to strength and conditioning, and that's the only time I'll see them during the week. Then my training schedule dominates everything, and then you have like time set aside, which is your free time to do whatever you want. But I'm very much, everything else goes on the back burner when I'm getting ready for a fight. Like even interviews and stuff, the only interviews that I'll do are really with people who interviewed me when I was on the local scene. So like out of it's
called investments.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is like worthwhile. You guys put in the time to give us a little bit of exposure. Before we get here, you guys deserve that exposure back when we're on the biggest stage.
Not everyone, but like no, it is kind of cool. You do have a great way of giving back, and I know some of these guys are just straight up your friends, but some of your training partners, it seems like you've even took them for a shopping spree at Street X. That's what that looked like. But it looks like you kind of are really trying to look after sort of the boys that helped you sort of get here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like again, I'm not in a position now where I can do anything necessarily life-changing for anyone. I got to change my own life before that.
You flew private back.
Yeah, it was on a mate's jet. Don't worry about it. To be honest, like you do like think about trying to give back to the people who help, and I'm conscious of that. And I think if anything, Mum would be most proud of that. Being thankful and appreciative of the people who helped me. Like I got to get some of the boys back home some gifts, like Joey Luciano, Alistair Valdez and Dylan Lahari. Those boys like gave up, I can't tell you how many hours of their own training to get me ready for this, to do like Al Valdez was my main sparring partner for like 9 weeks, and I'm going hammer and tong at sparring, and he's getting told for the first 4 weeks, he's getting told, all right, you're a bit like Gavin Tucker. So he's trying to go southpaw at different times and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it's, okay, now you're Herbert Burns. So you just push and takedowns. And it's hard to do something that's not necessarily what you want to do. So those boys will have some gifts on their way home soon.
That's crazy too, because Luciano's getting ready for his own fight too.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. You
talk about your parents as well. They got to see your sort of photo shoot interview just before.
Yeah.
What's that like? Because I mean, notoriously mums hate this shit. Dads are a little bit like, oh, this is kind of cool. But, still, to get to show your parents, kind of take them to work. How was that?
Yeah. No, it's really cool. The Mum, as soon as I sat down, they started putting the makeup on. Mum pulled her phone out and she just started filming the whole process. I'm like, are you going to film the whole process of them putting makeup on, Mum? And she's like, no, I was just getting a little bit.
Was she like, my son's in the UFC?
Very much, very much. When I was in Jacksonville, my dad came to the hotel and he was staying at the hotel. And there's usually, at UFC events, you get a lot of fans and stuff find out where the hotel is, and then they'll come and just hang out in the lobby. So when you come out of the elevator, you see it here on the weekend.
That's how we got this interview.
Yeah. You see people come out, hey, can you sign this? Hey, can I get this photo? And it's there. And in Jacksonville, I would come out of the elevators, and I reckon 50% of the people would say, hey mate, can we get a photo? And then the arm would come around and they go, I was hanging out with your dad last night at the bar. So I think Dad just goes down to the bar and sort of his ears prick for UFC fans, and then he just waltzes on over and introduces himself. He's quite a social guy.
That's so cool. And did he get you into fighting or?
No, my older brother got me into fighting. Dad Not a fighter. Mum hates it. Mum doesn't watch. Doesn't hate it. She likes that I'm doing what I love, but she personally can't watch it. Too hard for her, which I empathise with.
So who do you just send a picture of your arm dangling?
Yeah, well,
Like-
that's what I said. I said to Ma, you know, we've been on the good end of this for a long time. We had one come back out the other way, but that's all right.
Is she one of those where she's like, "Oh, you broke that poor boy's leg"?
Nah, she doesn't. She actually doesn't care much for the other guy. It's more for me. She can switch that off a little bit.
What's Bacchus Marsh like? I mean, it just to me it's just a word. I've never heard it before you. I've never heard it after. I've never gone there. I don't know what comes there. Like,
Well, you know, all towns are just.
oh, your boy. We were just talking about you.
Hey, here he is. Hey, I think all towns and cities are just an amalgamation of different people, and I just love the people that are in Bacchus Marsh more than anything. So, yeah, I love it there.
Before I let you go, we touched on it, but I thought we'd touch on it here a little bit. What's it like watching your teammate Kaan Ofli? You know, he's down in the TUF finale. Like, were you close with him, or do you have that similar relationship with your coach? Like, you're not my friend, you're my teammate.
No. We were close. With my teammates, I'm much more like it's a level playing field. We're all mates. Kaan and I, it's hard not to have so much respect for someone who you've been in the cage with, like relentlessly trying to hurt each other and not hurt each other, but you know what I mean, like push each other to your absolute limits. And you know, Kaan's had a long road to get to the UFC, and there were times I'm sure he thought that, you know, opportunities weren't there for him that should have been, and I'm super excited to see him get his shot that he absolutely deserves, and he obviously has taken it with both hands and put himself in a position where he's in the final now. So
I asked some of the other guys about you in this situation of, do they feel almost like a bit of jealousy at times, or kind of, oh, I wish that was me when they watch you. Do you ever feel like a little bit of, and that sounds dumb, but like almost like guilt, like in this weird way of they've done just as much as you type thing,
yeah,
you're the one?
Look, it's not guilt. It's definitely not guilt. That's not the right word. But like, for example, Joey. Like, I look at Joey, and Joey's the only person, when he came into the gym, he was the only person who I looked at and thought, you know what, he works as hard as me. Right? Like, I always prided myself on, like, I was on the air dying, I was doing the extras, I was on time, I was this, I was that. And when Joey came into the gym, he was very much that guy. He was doing the extras, he was doing everything. And he also did all the other things that I respect a lot too, like holds pads for the other boys, helps coach guys who need it, does extras around the gym. He does so much stuff. So to see when he got his shot, which was essentially, you know, his rehearsal was against Jono Mikulev, and then he, you know, and he'll admit that himself that he just wasn't his night. He just didn't really show up as at a level that he was happy with, or that we know he can fight to see him, you know, get knocked back a fair bit from losing that fight, and now he's working to put himself in that position again. I don't feel guilt, but I feel for Joey, because he absolutely is talented enough, and he absolutely deserves to be in a major promotion, and I think he'd do really well if he was in the UFC.
Is it hard to switch it off when you go like, it sucks you lost, but like, I'm winning over here?
Nah, shit no. Like, because if Joey was the kind of guy who would be unhappy or, you know, jealous because I'm doing well, then that wouldn't make him the kind of person I admire, which he is. So it's not hard at all. I'll celebrate, and hopefully, you know, I'd love to put myself in a position, guys who, like Izzy and that are in, where they can kind of leverage themselves a little bit to help their teammates out. Like, I'd love to be that guy. So me succeeding doesn't take away from their shine at all, nor does them succeeding take away from mine.
And a couple more. I mean, just wanted to touch on you and your partner again. You defend takedowns well. Do you defend DMs from other girls well? Do you get a lot of groupies?
I've never seen a DM from a girl. Don't actually, yeah. No.
This is where
idea.
Dan Morsley can actually turn into your lawyer.
Yeah, no, I actually have never seen one. If they're there, I've never opened them. So.
You got a quick jab. I've never seen a quicker response.
No.
That
only
was
one girl for me.
Now, Herbert Burns, mate, I mean, of course you thought it was going to be Gavin Tucker. Is it, you know, same preparation, same sort of, you just worrying about what Jack Jenkins does and what he can do?
Yeah, look, fighting's fighting. I said in the press conference, Herbert does a lot of things well, and he does a few things exceptionally well. So for me, it was just preparing for those things that he does exceptionally well, and putting an emphasis on the things that I can do that's going to make that hard.
Awesome. Any final words for the people of Bacchus Marsh and everyone around the world cheering for you?
Just thanks everybody for your support, and if there's one thing I could say, that there was one fight where I felt going into that I was my best self and everything felt like it was aligning for me, and that was when I defended my eternal belt against Rod Costa, and that was the best performance I've ever had as a fighter, as a professional. And the way I've felt in the lead up in this camp and this week, and even now just a day or 36 hours out from the weigh-ins, I have that same feeling that I'm really going to open the shoulders up and put on a massive performance.
Well, Firejack Jenkins, thank you for your time, and break a leg.
Thanks, brother.
Oh, it's an applause.